Hello and welcome to Tug of Heart. This is Lori. I'm here with Marianne
Hi, Lori.
for episode 13. Today we're talking about the expansion of the heart and solitude and togetherness.
Okay.
We are coming right off of talking about loneliness. Now solitude. Distinct, right, Marianne?
Yes. Very different. Very different.
They're where loneliness is that feeling disconnected. There's plenty of people that can be unconnected intentionally. You're one of them that has comfort in it. Kind of a mystic, an ascetic, a monk. I call Marianne off of the air. I call her my monkeying around friend. Without the EY, it's just monkeying, right? And like,
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Now they know
Lori.
Marianne. I always say like she's just the monkeying around friend because Marianne should have
gosh.
been a monk, but we needed her
love
here.
it. I
so
long for those.
the supernatural
those lives.
placed her differently with great intention. But so loneliness is that you don't feel like you have the social connection you need, okay? And you're missing the closeness, friendships, trust, all the good stuff, togetherness, right? Community. When you get into solitude, the first thing you have to ask yourself is, are you doing it for a purpose? Because there's different types of solitude. There's, at its worst, solitary confinement that I can think of. There's for little kids, time out.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, it's and it's almost this connection. Like I used to try with my son to not do sit down and like go to bed if you're in trouble, read no toys, only reading if you're in trouble, and no not time out. We would time out together, which you agree with, thank goodness.
Yes.
Because I never wanted him to grow up with an association of like reading as punishment,
Right.
solitude as
right.
punishment.
Oh no. And time out was truly not meant to ever be punitive.
No.
But again, just the way our culture works is that it becomes punitive to take time out, which is really time in.
Do you remember I asked you this and you were a little confused at the time, but I was saying you had brought up about when a child needs a timeout or a frustrated teacher, I'm going to say it, I don't have to face everybody now, is like, enough, they need a timeout principle, okay? I'm joking, and like for a fact that they were like that. But if they're like time out, and I had said like, yeah, but sometimes Marianne walks them right back in because she's like, they're cool. They know what you were just talking about. They came with work right up to par with everybody else's, and they're
okay.
They meet the requirements you would hope to reach with time out. And then I would think like, so the teacher needs a timeout.
Yes.
And that's okay too.
Oh my gosh.
No shame in that, right, Marianne?
Oh, please.
But sometimes
tap yourself out,
but
especially when working with young children.
We start to damage little kids sometimes just because we don't quite recognize the difference. I need a break, and we're like, out. Now I'm not talking about school, but like at home. It's like, enough. All you were saying is, I needed a break.
Yes.
Timeout, ideally, is... I didn't even know we were going to start talking about timeout, but it's a good place to start with the little ones, right? Because we can take that into solitude that extends longer in time and what can happen in that time. But for the purpose of just little kids, timeout, what do they say? Timeout should match their age in years, the minutes?
Yes.
So 3 is 3 minutes. I like to think that's because kids are able to efficiently do what has to happen in timeout. And the more stuff they gather with experience, the more time they need to get back to that nice state. Ideally, so timeout is, okay, stop, take a break, examine yourself apart from your connections. You're not disconnected, but just examine yourself, return to a better state, and return to your community. Simple. So it's kind of funny sometimes that we measure it with time, because some of them people can reach it very quickly, efficiently, and some cannot, right?
Well, as you're talking about it, this is what's occurring to me in our whole talk about, right, the heart. In really coming to understand just what an essential part of heart is connectedness, right? Longing to connect, being and belonging to community. We resist timeout. Kids resist timeout. Adults resist timeout. It's like, no, I can power through it. Don't take me to timeout. I don't want to go to timeout, because there is a terror in the being pulled from the community, from the connection. Will I have my place back when I return? How will I return? How will I be reintegrated into the community? So this, I'm kind of just thinking about it right now as we're talking. So this idea of solitude, in solitude, right? Even if it's chosen solitude, when you're in the more inside place, doing that inner work, really trying to tend to those spaces, there needs to be a recognition of the bridge back in. And sometimes we need to build it. We need to go respectfully across it. And the process from going from inside to outside, just like we have to put on our coats and our boots, like we have to prepare. And then we also have to prepare to receive the person who has returned. So I'm thinking about, we had a student at Spark.
I was picturing this.
Who was out of the community for a week because of some violence that happened in the community. And when I was meeting with his mother, he returned. It was right before he was about to return. I had sent him out to recess because his friends were in recess, or his class was in recess. So he went. And when he came back and our meeting was done and I asked him if he was ready to return to school and to the classroom, he was beaming with excitement, with love. And what he said was, my friends missed me. They all missed me. When I went onto the playground, they were all saying hi and hugging me. I'm ready to come back. And from that moment on, we never saw another act of aggression from this child, ever. Because that was what was healed. This sense of, I do in fact belong.
The belonging.
People care about me and they miss me. So when you go into a timeout, an adult timeout, a child timeout, there is nothing more rewarding or more heart-filled than for someone to receive you and say, where have you been? What have you been thinking about? What did you discover? Tell me, I want to know.
Do you know my ego, what my ego likes the most?
What?
Is if you've been gone. And you guys, I don't know if you did me a disservice with this, but I would volunteer at Marianne's school. And when I had to be out and I would come back, you guys have ruined me for every other community, because I would always get this, it's not the same without you.
Yes, that is the truth.
Because it's Lori, but it's also because it's Lori. It's because it's the community. Do you get that? It was both and it was, I'm spoiled. Like, I'd have to be careful any other entry I make to not compare.
Well, I kind of love what you're getting at, which is there is the I of the solitude, the individual.
Yes.
But then there is the community and the culture of the community. So if the culture of the community is based on every little spark here, every individual,
equals a whole.
Yes, lights the flame.
That's right.
Then when your missing spark returns, we just can illuminate even better. There is this cultural value. So it is, does our culture allow for solitude? Is there a reverence to it? Is there a process to receive people back into the fold? Because we need both as human beings. Otherwise, we will be terrified to take time out.
Yes, I've seen even the terror in leaving, the terror of coming back, and then there's the terror of what happens in solitude, because it's a really good place to, more so as adults, not to take anything away from children, but we can have like this a retreat, okay? A soul retreat.
Yes.
Now, take that. Did you die? Did you have an out-of-body experience? Because it's a soul retreat, like, did your soul go? And no, you've taken your whole self with you. So what is that even? You're taking yourself and you're doing some heart work, which then through communication speaks to the soul, which I always say is the wisdom. And to do that, there's some resolution a lot of times that has to happen, and that's like grappling with whatever was breaking connections.
Yes.
Okay. Or whatever is preventing them from being expansive, which is what we're talking about. There's always more. If you think, oh, I got it, I'm good, I connect, I'm popular, I fit in, whatever, good. And then there's the so what? So what do you, like, what's the next step? Because that should be put to tremendous use then. So you could sometimes have that. So just to back up, the aim of solitude, from what I heard you say, I'm starting to sound like you. Learning
Do I
to
say
listen.
that?
I'm
Oh,
learning to listen.
It's so beautiful.
It can happen.
Yay.
If Lori can do it, anyone can.
Yay.
So what I'm hearing you say, Marianne, be me, is the aim of solitude is connection with yourself,
Yes.
with the supernatural if need be, and then with your community.
Yes.
Not in that order, in any order you want.
Yes.
Okay.
Because we're individuals, we exist in a certain culture, a community, and we exist within a universe
That's right.
that is more than any of us.
And
really
as we pointed out, a world, and in a relationship with the world, the community, the world, maybe the world and then the community.
Yeah.
Which is really, really either a lot of disconnect or really bad connection. I was thinking about this in terms of just connection and solitude in a way that it can help, is people can be connected all the time. You got to be really connected to fight nonstop with somebody. So solitude can provide that opportunity to work on it. If you see people that come to you for therapy, right?
Sure.
And that is a solitude, a guided solitude, I want to say. I'm projecting. You can correct me, but like, so they go in and they talk to you, but even though they're not calling it that or naming it that, in a way, you're guiding them through separation from probably something that is needs work outside of that room where you're sitting, and they're able to hopefully better connect, right?
Completely. Yeah. I think you got that really
Okay.
on
And
target.
I think with but I do think it can also be a heart job. There's nothing, they're not competitive at all. Different circumstances call for like a different approach, I would say. And a lot of times when you do, we're not telling everybody like we're all in retreat, guys. So we're not like signing people up for a $10,000 retreat today. Don't worry about that. But we're all right now in solitude. So are we in solitary confinement? And if we are, how could I raise that from being solitary confinement, which I guess if you want to call it that, is like you are being told, like, basically, this is not okay. You need to go and you need to face what was going on that led you to this spot, okay? And it's forced from the outside, but now this is a different situation. How would we turn COVID and isolation into a very meaningful, as much as possible, way to return better, stronger, new energy, new intention, and having learned from before the isolation, which we've decided in our heart, for those that have enough of isolation. I'm doing some inside work. It's now just solitude because I've made this kind of peace. I'm not reacting in a way that it's all loneliness. You can still long, but it's not that frantic, just grasping and everything. So how do we take that next step where let's transition into a solitude and get some heart work done? What would you tell me?
Well,
For
again,
us.
I would go to, like, as human beings, embodied, right? And in doing this work, that's both an inside job and an outside job. I think our greatest clue to navigating solitude or connection are our senses. So you start with listening, right? Listening to stories, listening to books, listening to nature, listening. What am I hearing? What are the messages that are coming through to me? And then we use our eyes and we look for patterns and signs and symbols, and we use our hearts and we come to feel what we're feeling, and we allow this to all move through in a way that is part of a process that we are being curious about.
I love that.
That's it. It's very curious to see what is unfolding. And again, so we have our embodiment and we also have nature as such a teacher. So nature, here we are. We actually just came to St. Bridget's Day, which is the midpoint between winter and spring. And Bridget is the keeper of the flame, right? The keeper of the hearth. So back in December, at the start of winter, our seeds were planted for what is going to come in the spring, right? They've gone into the ground. They're under the snow. Midway, these seeds start to sprout. We don't see any of it happening. They're breaking out of these little shells on their own, in connection, but not really knowing who they're connected to. And then ultimately spring comes and they're above ground and we see this bloom. So this 3-phase process of planting seeds, listening to what are the seeds we need to have planted, to allow them to germinate underground through the wintering, and then to see them come into bloom. These are things that it's a very solitary, quiet process that's happening. And my experience of solitude is a deeper connection to the collective energies. It is actually when I get outside of myself.
Wait, a deeper connection?
To the collective community.
I want to clarify this because it started with the senses. So there's a heightened sense that then transitions to, I guess, like the sixth sense.
To a knowing.
Right,
yeah. To an inner truth.
Okay,
to an inner truth, to figuring out what are the places in me. But in connection, in community, our mind swoops in. And it takes a lot of work not to be self-centered and self-thinking and absorbed and questioning.
Amen.
Right? In solitude, oh my God, I love so much more. I experience such deeper love for everybody and understanding and forgiveness. So,
how much crap have you found? Not crap. Gosh, geez. How much crap have you found in your house when you're like, I love writing. I love painting. I should have said crap, such a bad word for it. But like, what if we just looked around in our heart the same way? Like, how much stuff have you discovered in your house that you're like,
yeah,
oh, that's what That's where that is.
And that's that curiosity.
Have you done that in your own environment?
Yes, like
Me
let's
too.
go inside. Let's clear out some of these drawers and cabinets.
Yeah.
And we have a house to tend to
Yeah,
inside
well,
of us.
I'm like, when was I that size? You have to let go of stuff, right? I'm being funny by we have to let go of this, but there's this understanding of like this weight of stuff you can't take with you.
Yeah, lighten up.
For it's a chance to do that. So Marianne, since I'm in this spot today and I'm doing all right with it, what I'm hearing you say
All right, let me hear.
is in solitude, you find that you're able, and I wrote this note, so I know this part's right, to fine tune your senses. Okay? Which is funny because I actually had made a little scribble note about this, and then you can kind of attend to this curiosity with natural and maybe supernatural. And you're able to better do this. Now, this is a little bit of my own interjection with it because the mind can be distracting. I'm going to take it the next step. For me, being the kind of mind that I come to the table with, which you already know, human beings are so distracting.
Yes. Yes.
Not just like other people, like
yes,
it is the mind and it is the self and it is all this.
It's a lot of information.
But society is
to
also very
process.
distracting, and human beings have their whole atmospheres that can be distracting. So appropriate and purposeful, not always so when your intentions like the introspection. But so going back to the senses, the fine tuning of your senses. And then you talked about how it leads to this like other awareness. And I just wanted to tell you, I had taken this note when I was just thinking freely, I guess, about this, that you establish this connection with yourself first in solitude. That's when you're kind of getting there. You're not, because the thing is, you can ask yourself, are we ever really alone if we take ourselves? We don't always take ourselves to lonely places, and we're very alone. But if you take yourself, your inner deepest self, which we call the heart,
Right.
are you ever really alone? I'm going to say it's not a definitive answer. For me, I would say no, I'm not alone if I'm in my heart. I don't feel it, at least.
I don't either.
I have ancestors there. I have my
know.
Sethi there. I have my lineage. I have you there. You live in my heart.
Right.
So many people.
I kind of
I
love
keep in
that
my heart.
expression. Let's just mark it. Like, who lives in your heart?
Yeah.
Who lives there?
Right. The people that tug at our heart. And I say all the time, just like you, like there's people that just have a piece of my heart for whatever reason. Like outwardly, sometimes I just mean I'm weak for them, but there's other people that just have a little piece of my heart that they reside there. So it's not always alone. You could be doing something for them for when you come back, or you could be making yourself better. But without that distraction of what I'm seeing, human beings or the mind or noise, okay?
Yes.
I keep coming back to the senses, and that you can fine-tune the senses. And what I found in my processing this is that what rises is also the other senses. And now we're not getting like, I'm not afraid to go mystical, either are you, but to be very clear, there's plenty of senses acknowledged scientifically that aren't taught in your first grade science book.
Oh my gosh,
okay?
yes.
So even at that level,
The energy.
there is, and let's just start with, for me, one of the things that I'm able to work on, because as I still say Aspie, whether it's appropriate or not, that's my name, okay? I know now it's like everything's controversial. I'm Asperger's, I'm Aspie. But as an Aspie, one of the things that suffers for me around people, and you know this, is I have a hard time reading people. And so what suffers when you can't read people is that intuitive sense. You don't have to be Aspie to do this, okay? Everybody stands with that heightened senses that you're talking about in solitude. They stand to heighten that intuitive sense. And the intuitive sense is when whatever learning, experience, changes that have happened in the subconscious, you're able to bring it forward to the conscious. Okay, because we say, like, where I don't have too much intuitive senses, does that person like me? People that are intuitive, it's their subconscious that kind of knows, right? And they trust in that feeling because it didn't exactly say danger, danger, but you just have kind of a feeling. You're not going to react to it, but you're going to choose your steps based on that. But I think it doesn't have to be just me, right? Don't you think intuition rises in solitude or has the potential to for everybody?
Well, I think that what it's doing is, as this noise comes down, as there's a quieting of the mind, and the distractions, then you begin to plug into this other subtle world.
That's right.
And it is what you're talking about. You're talking about this energy system that, right, that indigenous people would create songs that would transmit through energy lines, and people across the globe on the other side of the globe would be singing the same songs. So there is so much untapped potential in this subtler, quieter space. But I think we're also made to be afraid of that if we stop, if we go to the noiseless place, what is that going to be okay? And it takes a little practice.
I'm going to tell you my visual of this because you think like with the words and I think with the pictures. I do want to point out that when we're afraid of that, I guess what I'm calling the subconscious or the intuitive sense, okay? Yes. Intuitive sense being not just the subconscious, but where it shares with the conscious all this beautiful stuff it knows that you didn't know you know, right? For me, it's not a dangerous place, and I know you're not saying that, but I want to clarify this. When people are afraid to go there, and it kind of it implies that there's something fearful, I would picture it more like a hallway, and echoey hallway, okay, up to the door of the subconscious. But you have that hallway, and I think it's the hallway that's scary because up until the door and in the hallway, you can still take that noise with you. And you can still make noise. That's yourself, your fear of the shame I talked about last time, your discomfort with this, your ruminating, whatever. Let it bounce, bounce, bounce. But once you do cross that particular threshold, that part's not scary. Take the steps through the hallway.
Right.
What do you think, Marianne? I mean,
I do. And I think that what you're saying is it is a process. It's not an on and off switch. And it is, and part of the walk in solitude is uncomfortable. It's not going to be blissful every minute. It is going to be somewhat uncomfortable, but you stay the course and you have this chance to arrive.
I'm going to tell you something. I'm interrupting and laughing and just stay the course. Okay, I was laughing before that because when you started saying about the hallway and the process, my next visual, which was a memory, do you remember when me and you were sitting with Seth?
100%.
This little boy.
It was monumental.
It was his first experience, just weeks in, of the social process. And Marianne, you sat in the hallway with me and my son, and he was not ready to open that door and go in. And part of it was I kind of felt him because I'll chill out in the hallway for a week before I'll go in the door. And
Right.
He was rolling, and then he was teasing it. He was kicking the wall to
I
the room he
remember
wanted
it.
to enter.
Yes.
And then he was just rolling and talking and all of this, but it's staying the course. And that's in our world and with society to hold him, and thank God and thank you, Marianne, from a mom that you were there with him. He was able to enter the door, and he did nicely, and he had a beautiful life.
He did.
That he I won't even trouble myself with picturing what it would have been otherwise. It's enough to say my son had a beautiful and tremendous educational experience. I'm going to cry, but thank you for that. But in the hallway, your heart can be a Marianne, and it'll stay the course with you. All it has to do is wait. When we always say, hold the space, hold it in your heart.
Yes.
It's okay.
Right.
You can have this waiting area of sorts where your heart is very present, and it's like, go ahead, thrash it out, say what a such and such this person is, what a dope you are, work it out, roll it out, fall asleep in exhaustion, like you were saying about Emma, your daughter, in the last show, and wake up if you need to. Keep trying. It's okay to be in the hallway. Nobody says that there's not a time limit to these things. That's only outside our hearts where this weird time and time out exists. You got 3 minutes to pull it together. Mm-hmm. You get 30 years to pull it together. And
I agree with you,
This is when
Lori.
I start to get mad because
I agree.
One of the things that hurts me the most is so many people forced into confinement, some deserving, but if it's not to come back and reconnect, what have we done?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm like just it. My everything in me rises to this.
I
and against it. But it is with solitary confinement, and you think of prisons and you think of everything, but just a lot of those people have mental issues, obviously, and part of it, which we talked about previously, and I'll let you finish out on this in a weird way because I don't know where I'm headed with it, is that like, if you have a child, we talked about loneliness, and you don't teach them very young about loneliness versus solitude and purposefulness, the child who's lonely is most likely to be a criminal. And it's very sad because then we punish a criminal like they need to be disconnected, but that's what got them there to begin with. Have a heart, everybody. I'm begging at this point. I turn it over to you because I get too emotional to be clear with this stuff.
Well, because the child who's lonely doesn't feel like they belong to the community or the society, and are so at risk for being preyed upon by communities that can be dangerous just for the sake of feeling like they belong. And it all goes back to that sense of where do I belong? And the other part of it is that we start to try on these roles that we think are going to get us to belong.
Absolutely.
And so then we go further and further away from this sense of authenticity. Who am I really? And then it grows into the whole imposter syndrome. Like, am I real? Like, do I even love? Do I connect? Because it feels like everything becomes just an as if towards connection. So if we are going to turn that on its head, then exactly what you described with Seth. Seth showed up for school. His showing up was laying on the floor and rolling around and kicking the wall. That's where he was. You and I, because we held ground together, we held ground. We were like that soil for this little tumbling seed that was rolling around.
Roly-poly.
That he actually had to like clean himself up. You know, like what do I need to get off of me so that I can enter, that I can wake up, break through and say, oh, okay, I can be here, and then move into connection. But if you don't have good, solid ground,
yes,
then
what you said with the snow too, yes.
You're lost. Mm-hmm. You're lost. And I said to you today, Lori, I feel like you seem very anchored to me. Now, you've gone through some devastating pain this week, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at first you thought I said,
Angered.
you seemed angered.
I was like,
what? I am angered. Meanwhile, your eyes are so weary and you're so bravely like sitting here and bringing forth your heart. But there is a groundedness about you.
I feel a weird calm from above me.
Yeah,
I mean,
and that could be
maybe my
this,
higher self even. I don't know.
right, this wrap of the supernatural, this wrap of in my solitude, in my pain, there is this collective presence of heart.
There is
individual hearts, collective hearts.
I take over to say this real quick, Marianne. You're so good about giving credit, and I think you should. I always tell you that because it's not you, but it's also through you a lot of times. And I am grounded. I'm rooted. From your heart to mine, and hearts have the capacity to do that. They're mystical. They're and this is when we say supernatural. I'm not saying come and get on your knees where I get on my knees ever. Okay, I do believe what I believe, but I believe more than that we each have our own unique and distinct hearts with their value. You asked me this week even about being open to things that I'm not, and I'm open to things you're not, and vice versa. And I said, Marianne, like I'm not sure what you mean because I've never seen that as a deficit. I see it as an asset, absolutely. And that does come from trust but the thing is, what I do trust, I would question some of it on its own. Okay, not you, not your heart, and so I trust. I would follow you right into those places personally, but that's because I do trust you to be that anchor and that soil you're talking about. I'm going to finish this just so people understand because we're not finished with this. We'll move from this maybe togetherness, but first Valentine's Day. Let's take not a heartbreak, but let's just take a all-in heart and just
chocolate.
Let's do a whimsical.
Let's do
Valentine's.
Chocolate.
Let's do chocolate. But for Seth, this little boy was rolling around, autistic, heavily autistic. I've been told. Whatever. I don't. He was deeply Seth. I prefer to say
Definitely deeply Seth. Beautifully
but by
Seth.
somebody holding his hand and giving his heart permission to do its work. Seth surpassed you, Marianne, and I want to thank you for loving my son to the level of kindergarten, first, second, and then the humility to say, go above me and beyond me. And I know when the time's right, he came back and it turned to where at times he told you secrets and stuff he also needed. This is a very young boy, and he was able to share with you. This kid was rolling on the ground and could not get himself together. And was able to, at some point, very quickly guide you because you trusted his heart. That's why I say I trust yours, even though we're not the same.
Well, then I am going to share this as we close because I do think you're bringing the miracle of the heart connection. Mm-hmm. That was the very first encounter, right? Pretty much with Seth on the floor, non-verbally rolling around. His heart present, loving him, truly
he
loving
was sweet.
him. Because he's just so lovable. He's just a bundle of love rolling around. Truly, truly, it emanated from him. You talk about eminence, right? He emanated love. And then my last conversation with Seth, which is he said to me, I had a dream where I was on Mars on a beach with my mom and dad, and they were so sad because I had died.
This is before diagnosis? Or?
Before diagnosis, okay. Because I had died. And I said to them, like, why are you being so sad? I'll see you in our next life together. And that was my last conversation with Seth. If that is not an arc of mysticism and magic of the heart, I don't know what is. And so I will remain devoted to his legacy
If you have been. Mm-hmm.
and to our work in understanding this mysterious heart of ours.
Big stuff. We
It
haven't
is.
even started, but we're here.
We are.
Thank you, Marianne, and thanks
welcome.
everybody.
Thank
We're
you,
here on
Lori.
Strong Island. You can like and share the conversations if you care to. We would love it, and if you don't care to, then we take it as an act of love. Either way, have a beautiful week. We're headed towards Valentine's Day. Be extra open to your heart. Use solitude for coming back better, stronger, more ready to give and receive from what you're actually made for, and that's connection and relation.
Beautiful.
Farewell.
Beautifully said. Farewell.